Top five, top five, top five.
So on topic, back with another video. I'm Strange Wang. He is Nate. Today we're doing top 5 movie villains in honor of Kraven the Hunter, famous Spider-Man villain. But we also have a new series coming out with the decades of each villain, which is the best villain of the 80s. We're starting with the 80s and moving from there. That should be coming out on the channel sometime this month, maybe next month. So subscribe if you like villains and film. He's going to go over how the top 5s work, and then we're going to get into it.
He's going to start with his 5 and 4. I'll give my 5 and 4, 3, 2, 3, 2. Then we trade off number ones. We also have something called the Zemeckis rule, which just means if we both have the same character on our list, but one person has it 2 spots or higher, then we want to talk about it once.
So these are our personal favorite villains. This is them in their movie. They might not be Thanos snapping half the population away, but if they're doing evil shit in their movie, if they're the protagonist in their movie, the antagonist in their movie, to me, I was like, that's a movie villain to me. So some of these characters you will not see on the top 50 villains of all time. These are my personal favorites. Same for him. Number 5 would be one you would see on the top greatest 50 villains of all time, and that's the T-1000. You got the Invincible Force versus the Immovable Object. And the T-800, you saw what he did in the last movie. So you up that, and it's not one of those things where it's a Fast and Furious, let's throw him in space. It's a logical upgrade that is more terrifying, that's more powerful, that has more elements to him to kill the Terminator, to kill Sarah Connor, to kill John Connor. So to make that the villain, and it works and it makes sense, and for him to just keep coming and coming and coming because he has tunnel vision, it just makes you root for the Connors and the T-800 that much more. And because you root for them so much, you buy into the relationships. The tension between Sarah and Arnold works. The friendship, the father-son aspect of the T-800 and John Connor just makes it all that much special because you want them to win more. And everything that piles on through those relationships adds to, I want them to win more. And he also is James Cameron's so smart about peppering these scenes in, these big action set pieces, to, alright, they got away barely on the motorcycle in the beginning. They barely got away here. They barely got away. And each time, it's like, alright, he was a little bit closer. It's a little bit closer. The last scene, he fucked Arnold up.
Yeah.
So, it just adds to the tension of that. And Skynet sent him. So he's a villain in a bigger sense of the world. The world that is being built, but he's a villain nonetheless, which is why number 5.
Makes sense.
Number 4 is going to be one that you're not going to see on the top 15 greatest villains of all time. Is Julius Hoffman he's the judge from the trial of the Chicago 7. He is a fucking asshole.
That's true.
He's the worst. He looks at these guys, and I know it's hard to look at Sacha Baron Cohen and not judge him, but as soon as they took the stand, he knew what he was going to say. He was going to say 7 counts guilty. His little gal on leave. And then the fight back, and then just the more it's a pull-tug situation, and his ignorance just makes me dislike this man so much. He says every time they knock down a wall or get over a hurdle, he sets one up. It's bigger than the last one. They feel like they can't win. And he's just a fucking dick about it the whole time. And I don't like the man. And he represents the man of the situation. So because of that, he gets under my skin. And I hate that character.
Yeah.
So to me, he's top 5 villain worthy for my personal list.
It's a pretty good one.
Shanks.
My number 5 is pretty broad, but I just really love talking about it because I'm never going to say it's not true. But number 5 on my list is Nazis. All of them. And Nazis make excellent movie villains.
Even Schindler?
Because Schindler wasn't a Nazi.
He wasn't?
No.
No, I haven't seen the movie.
Shut up, stupid!
Nazis are great movie villains because there's no question that they're the bad guy. Nobody's making a movie about a sympathetic Nazi except Mel Brooks, but it's still making fun of Nazis. So, whether it's Indiana Jones, freaking like a James Bond movie, whatever, or even things that are like Nazis, like the Empire and Star Wars, or I can't remember exactly what they're called, but in Grand Budapest, the people that stop them on the train. It's like Nazis are great movie villains because as soon as you see a swastika on someone's arm, then you're like, you're the bad guy. And I like villains to just be bad guys sometimes. I love a sympathetic villain. I like ones that have complicated backstories or really deep personal reasons for why they believe what they believe in. But sometimes I just want my bad guy to be a bad guy. I don't want him to be complicated. And so Nazis in general are my number 5. My number 4 is interesting because it's the T-800 from Terminator. I really...
Okay.
I could have gone a bunch of different routes with this, but I really love the type of villain that is just like unthinking. It is just like it has a singular purpose, and its only goal is to accomplish that purpose, and that purpose makes it a villain. And so, not only does Schwarzenegger look incredibly cool in this role, especially when I was a little kid and saw it for the first time, he's just terrifying. Like, the first Terminator is like a borderline horror movie. Like, he is just stalking and stalking and stalking.
That's a fact.
And outside of incredibly unconventional means, your protagonist is completely powerless to stop him. And so it makes it really interesting to me. And there are several villains that kind of fall into that category, but he looks the coolest. And I have fond childhood memories of watching it, so went with T-800.
You dig?
I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Top 10, I would have snuck him in there
Yeah.
just because of how I saw the movies. Very similarly that Nostalgia plays in.
Yeah. The T-1000 is great. I also saw that movie when I was a kid. I thought he was the coolest thing ever. But he just doesn't look as cool as Arnold.
Yeah, he's in a cop uniform. Everyone looks cool in a cop uniform.
Yeah, and the CGI didn't age super well, and so like the fact that I didn't watch them again until I was older hurt a little bit to me. So,
CGI is great in that movie.
It's debatable.
It's better than fucking Expendables 4, I tell you that. Worst CGI I've ever seen in my life.
worse than Aquaman.
Yes.
Huh.
My dude.
6 hours later.
This list, like I said, with years, easily could have been top 10. There's
Sure.
so many great villains out there.
Yeah.
It was really hard to narrow it down. Number 3, Marla Grayson from I Care a Lot. She just gets under my skin. I hate this lady so fucking much.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
She's a fucking horrible person. She's a real life person. She's kicking elderly people out of their homes by the dozens.
Mm-hmm.
She has no remorse for it. She finally meets her match in a sense.
Yeah.
And then outplays them.
Mm-hmm.
No one is sacred to her. Even her girlfriend she kind of fucks over.
Yeah.
She's selfish.
Yeah. She's kind of got that De Niro and Heat mentality.
Very much so.
Yeah.
What's the Dolores Harry Potter pink teacher? Umbridge.
Yeah.
She's the human version of Umbridge, basically.
Stank bitch.
In real life, in a real life situation, she's the fucking worst. And I hate her with all of my... Like, I watched this movie, and I was standing up, screaming at my TV.
Yeah.
Yelling obscenities at it. Because she just does, like... I rooted for the gangsters in this movie because I hated her that much. Because just the inhuman selfishness that this lady has is just... This movie made me dislike the world a little bit. Like, you go watch this movie and lose faith in... I personally lost a little bit of faith in humanity until the end. And that's like the most satisfying movie death of all time to me. Maybe not of all time, but it's definitely top 3. Because it does kind of come out of nowhere, which hurts it.
Yeah.
But it was like hinted at, like, it wasn't like it came out of nowhere. Like,
Well, it basically opens with that scene
Yeah.
and then comes. It does open with that
Yeah.
scene and then comes back to it.
so like, my favorite football team won the Super Bowl when Shorty died. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love that, and because that satisfaction of it ending, to me, that also helps making a good villain. So, number 3. Number 2 is Buford T. Justice from Smokey and the Bandit. This character is a racist. He's verbally and physically abusive to his son.
True.
He says he's going to punch his wife in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Me's a misogynist, chauvinistic pig.
He throws the idea of police jurisdiction out the window.
Yes.
Guy's the worst. I mean, I like him, but he's the worst.
Yeah, he sucks.
However, he's an imbecile. And because he's an imbecile, all that stuff he does, it makes it funny because he's a short, overweight, southern cop. And every time he does something like that, it usually, 9 times out of 10, backfires in his face.
It's funny to me.
I like laughing at a villain. Like, he's the butt of every joke.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like this to me. This is my Batman and Joker, because you have the biggest loser on planet Earth with Buford T. Justice. He's not good looking. He's not attractive.
Yeah.
And then you have one of the coolest motherfuckers to ever be on screen, and Burt Reynolds and the Bandit, and he gets the girl. Mm-hmm. He's doing all kinds of dope shit. He looks good for that time period. That's like a sex symbol of the 70s.
Yeah.
And
takes his hat off.
Yeah, only for 2 things. So you get that yin and the yang, and again, it makes me like him even more. And because he's the butt of every joke, I'm satisfied a billion times in this movie because he's getting his constantly.
Yeah.
So I love that about it. He's a villain that makes me laugh. Like, I love quoting him because it's fucking stupid funny if the person also gets it. We used to quote this movie at work all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I love Buford T. Justice.
Mm.
That's my number 2.
Nice. My number 3, no surprise to anyone who knows me, it's Darth Vader.
Surprised it's not higher.
Who doesn't die a villain. I mean, he still kind of does. He just saves his son. It's not like he had this massive change of heart about like what side he was on and all that. He just didn't want to see his son die. But yeah, just like faceless, big, imposing, badass voice. Like, I will never not... Like, if I ever want to see something on the screen that just gives me an incredibly strong sense of joy and nostalgia at the same time, I'm going to watch the first 15 minutes of New Hope. And Darth Vader is just an incredibly important villain to my childhood. Very important to my constantly developing love of movies. Great example of what you can do with a bad guy without even putting a face to them, making them an incredible mystery until your second movie, but then still having a ton of mystery behind him, because at that point we didn't know anything about his past other than just like the little snippet that we got from Obi-Wan in A New Hope, talking about, oh, I knew your father. We fought together in the Clone Wars. So I just dig him. He's pretty dope. My number 2 is interesting to me once again because it's not exactly a T-1000, T-800 situation like we had, but it does have something in common with your number 3 because they're played by the same actress. But my number 2 is Amy from Gone Girl.
Yeah.
I love this movie. This is an incredible movie. I feel like I haven't watched this movie enough. And like,
It's terrifying.
And I'm doing myself a disservice by not watching this movie at least every other year or something like that. But yeah, cold, calculating, like, and all because you're just not happy with your life. Like, nothing awful really happened to this person other than she just isn't happy with her parents and her husband. And that is it.
Stank bitch.
The lengths that she goes through to create this situation to put Ben Affleck in is awful on its own, but then even how it resolves to like switch up her plan, keep this same level of manipulation, essentially trap him into a marriage with this absolutely insane person, knowing that she is, but now you can't really do anything about it, is incredibly impressive, incredibly terrifying, and just really, really fun to watch her work in that movie. And so in terms of favorite villains, she's my number 2.
She was my number 6.
Nice.
It was difficult to leave her off.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's a horror movie for men, basically. In a sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a shitty husband, sure.
Well, I mean, even if you're not, you know, like, Barney Stinson's getting stabbed when he should be doing the stabbing.
He got his throat slit.
In a figurative sense.
Yeah.
Number 1 for me is going to be Max Cady from the 1960s, Cape Fear. Get that Robert De Niro bullshit out of here. For me, cinema is subjective. So, to me, the reason why he's my favorite villain is because I find him to be dynamic. This performance is dynamic because Robert Mitchum has such a screen presence that makes you pay attention. It's cool. He has that sly charisma about him. So, also, it's the 60s. So, you don't see the rape. You don't even hear the word rape, I don't believe. He sexually assaulted is probably what they used.
Yeah.
Or something similar to that. So, you know he's a rapist, a convicted rapist.
Mm-hmm.
But because he has a slyness, a swagger to him, it doesn't really set in. And he just keeps getting more and more awful.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help that Gregory Peck knows him from the past. It's not on camera, it's not on film, because you don't show too much. So for him to be on the offensive, to send people to attack him, for me personally, because he does have this cool swagger about him, and he is in control, and that power, again, adds to the swagger and everything, it's kind of like, damn, like, both of you aren't great people. But again, he's trying to protect his family because Mitchum hasn't gone to that level yet. So the more it escalates, the more you side with Gregory Peck, and that's your hero of the movie for me personally. Wherein I was like, I kind of didn't care about him, but I kind of did. So to have the villain just make you feel all these different ways throughout the film, and he is a sadistic fuck.
Yeah.
He beats women, he rapes women. He doesn't find it wrong terrifying a kid. He kills dogs. He kills people. He wants revenge more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, he's a villain with a purpose. And that menacingness you see at the end of the movie, it's just... it's haunting. Hear him... then you like go on the rewatch, and it's like, you know, depending on when you rewatched it, you know, he can say counselor in that southern accent, and it is haunting, you know? Like, it sticks with you. So because of that, he's my favorite movie villain of all time.
Solid. My number 1, I looked at a couple, like, best movie villains of all time lists. Surprisingly, I expected to see this one on more. I only saw it on 1. And they had him pretty low. And I guess it's because he's technically only in, like, half the movie. But he is the villain of the movie, in my opinion. And it's Big Daddy from Django Unchained, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Or Calvin Candy, sorry, not Big Daddy. What?
Personally, I would go Steven.
I think Steven's good too.
Steven's the puppeteer. He plays Leo like a bitch in that movie.
Once.
Yeah.
Steven still knows who's in charge. He doesn't push it because he knows.
See, you say he doesn't push it. I think he knows when to pick his spots.
But when Calvin tells him to back off, he backs off.
Same thing with Laura. He's like, Miss Laura, I suggested take it down to the rock people.
He's manipulative. He knows that he can play them in the way that he wants to. Yeah. That's how he got in that position. But he's not the one making the decision.
Yeah, sure.
And, to me, again, like you mentioned with Max Cady, charisma off the scale. He's funny. He's witty. He's intelligent to a degree. Yes, the only reason he really notices what's going on is because of Steven. But regardless. And like, I made my point about Nazis earlier. The only other group I can really think of off the top of my head that is like, if you see them in a movie, you know they're the bad guy. It's people who own slaves.
That's fair.
And not only does he own them, he fights them, forces them to fight. He puts them in the box. I'm sure he's had more than plenty of them killed. The motherfucker sells people for a living. And there are plenty of slave owners and slavers and slave traders in film. But none are as fun to hate to me as Calvin Candy. None are as personally entertaining as him. He's just a piece of shit. And it's also just like a joy to watch him die. Because even though you know that is going to make shit hit the fan and it's about to go down, it is just very worth it. And I really appreciate it.
It also is done in like one of the most cinematic like death scenes of all time too.
Yeah, truly. It really is. It's like the only time that the Doc loses his cool in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like he's so poised and in control, but this dude gets under his skin so much that like even he can't contain it. And it's like the most evil thing, not truly, the most evil thing that he does in that movie is own slaves and force them to fight to the death. But for the purposes of the movie, the most evil thing that Calvin Candy does is try to force a man to shake his hand. And then...
Yeah, I mean, he forces him to see this slave get ripped apart by dogs and shit.
Right.
So it does have that build up.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very surprising list. Like, I feel like if I would have, like, if you would have made a top 10 of what you thought mine would be,
yeah,
you would have did really well. I would have not have guessed.
Well, I think the thing is there's so many movie villains.
And
right?
You kind of just threw Nazis in there. Like, Hans Landa could have been a solo pick.
Well, he was on my list, and I was like, well, Nazis.
The indie Nazis.
Yeah.
Like, very surprising list from you, but...
Yeah.
Let us,
any World War II movie.
Yeah.
Like...
Let us know your thoughts and opinions about this top 5. Your favorite top 5 movie villains. Did we fuck up? All that good stuff. Put it in the comment section below. Scroll back up the like button. Share the video. And subscribe.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.